Although the call for restorative justice is not unique to South Bend, the city's story behind it is. And leaders spearheading the movement tell me the Black community has endured a painful past in the city, from being denied housing to being forced to live in the most undesirable part of South Bend. But they tell me now is the time to work together towards making a wrong right and start the process of healing.
It's going to take an intentional and well-designed intervention to remediate, all of the harm that's been caused for decades.
For far too long, local leaders, like Black Lives Matter founder Jordan Geiger, say African American communities have been neglected in South Bend. Now Geiger is joining a new movement alongside 2nd District Common Councilman Henry Davis Jr., calling on the city for reparations, but more importantly, a path towards healing in the communities they believe never had a fair chance.
Yeah, if you look at every socioeconomic indicator, Black people are at the bottom.
African Americans deserve to be a priority of the city, just like any other demographic within the city of South Bend. We are taxpayers, we're citizens, we're mothers, we're fathers, we're all of those, everything else that everyone else is. We want people to have the opportunity to realize the American dream. And this is not it. This can't be it.
Davis Jr. and Geiger both say the push for reparatory justice here at home really started in April of 2022 after a study conducted by the private consulting firm Urban 3 revealed racist bank redlining practices in South Bend, refusing to write mortgages in mostly Black neighborhoods, and detrimental divestment in those same communities for decades.
Property didn't accrue in value, in the same way where exactly the same domicile, the same structure in one part of town versus another part of town. You can see a price differential of like close to $40,000 on the national average. And South Bend kind of mirrors that.
Because of the history of redlining and due to the fact that homes have been demolished and now you have vacant lots now in place, that the city in these communities lost somewhere close to $1 billion in tax revenue.
A redlining exhibit on display at the St. Joseph County Public Library late last year shed light on how the tactic was heavily used at the turn of the 20th century to deter mostly Black families from buying homes outside an area known as the Black Belt, essentially binding them to undesirable parts of the city, mostly on the west side of South Bend, a part of the city Davis Jr. believes was left behind.
The accommodations for quality of life for African Americans have been very low. You don't see a lot of grocery stores, banks. We don't see a lot of schools that are open to our children.
Black folks were relegated to the least desirable parts of the cities that were the most toxic and had the fewest accesses to the resources.
Dr. Darrell Heller, a historian and the director of Indiana University South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center, says redlining did a lot more than force segregation on the west side. According to a recent study by Prosperity Now on the average wealth divide in South Bend, the average median household income for Black families is around $21,000, nearly half that number for the average white family. Black home ownership rates are similar, sitting at just 35% in South Bend, that number even below the national average of around 43% for Black Americans.
When you begin limiting housing, you also limit education, you make healthcare issues much more prominent, economic opportunities and upward mobility, being able to create intergenerational wealth to pass on to children, all of those are impacted.
Despite a number of Black-owned businesses getting their start on the west side in the middle of the 20th century, only a couple are left standing today. Leaders say those devastating effects of racist practices continue to haunt Black residents now, with folks still living in communities plagued by violence and living in rundown homes.
We are trying to move past that. There's contamination out here, and it has been for decades. We deserve better than that. We deserve, again, to be a part of a realistic viewpoint of what the city can do and should do for its residents, just like we see on the east side of the river.
And once we have an understanding of how we got here, then we must determine how we move forward. What can we do to remedy these circumstances?
For both Geiger and Davis Jr., spearheading the Common Council's reparations resolution is personal for West Side natives.
My great-grandfather lived in an area where only black folks could live, essentially. They were restricted from moving to other parts of the city, and then they worked jobs where they weren't, paid fairly. Opportunities weren't like widely available to us as they were for other folk.
Me being an elected official says I must take my people to a higher level. This is the part of taking us to a higher level. We have to have the benefit of investment in our community.
Redlining practices and even the idea of reparatory justice brought to the South Bend Common Council at the beginning of this year isn't just a concept unique to this city. It's a part of a national movement involving more than 190 organizations, thanks to a reparations bill reintroduced by New Jersey Senator Cory Booker this year.
Why is this so important for the black community, black people in South Bend?
Yeah, it's the resolution is really important for black people in South Bend because we're still feeling the effects of past policy decisions that were made, and as a result, we're so far behind.
South Bend's resolution doesn't ask for cash payments. Instead, it calls for the use of federal American Rescue Plan dollars to invest in affordable housing, mental health counseling, medical services, and job training to help more residents climb the ladder of economic success, combat violence, and right long-ignored historical wrongs. The resolution also calls for this hurtful part of Black history to be taught in South Bend schools and a formal apology to be issued to Black residents of the neighborhood.
I don't think you've done true reparations or true restorative justice without that recognition, without that apology. And that's critical, but it's not enough. It's not about blaming white people, and particularly individual or personal white people, but it's a structure that has benefited white supremacy, and being white has given people an advantage that black people didn't have. And that's just a reality, not a moral statement.
Although the resolution has sparked some controversy among city leaders, those spearheading the effort tell me it sparked excitement from the Black community.
People are celebrating it. There's a lot of energy to help support the idea of reparations. I think we need to really spell that out.
Most importantly, leaders say the resolution is a way to get the conversation started, with the community impacted most at the center of it. These past injustices serving as a stark reminder of the harsh history faced by Black citizens in South Bend, with hope that the reparatory resolution will foster a collaborative effort to begin the process of healing.
We can no longer sit back and watch our side of town, our areas, to go into further decline.
Having all the voices, both those who are participated in the harms, those who were recipients of the harm, but having those come together.
For a long time, forever really, decisions have been made about us without us. And so this is bringing us to the table because we're building the table.
Right now, the resolution is still being looked at by the Common Council. However, Council President Sharon McBride announcing at the beginning of this month they're planning to form a special committee, which Dr. Darrell Heller will be a part of, to advance racial justice and equality here in South Bend. In studio, Naja Woods, ABC 57 News.